They were cold, wet, and alone in a foreign forest. 11 black American artillerymen, cut off from their unit, stumbled into a tiny Belgian village and knocked on a stranger's door. Inside, they found warmth, coffee, and a welcome. Outside, someone was already walking to a telephone. They sought shelter in a Belgian village. The welcome turned into betrayal. Before they were victims, the Wereth 11 were soldiers. They belonged to the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion, a segregated African-American unit of the U.S. Army. The battalion manned 155mm howitzers, heavy guns that could reach far behind enemy lines. Like most black combat units in World War II, the enlisted men were black, and almost all the officers were white. The 333rd had already been through a lot. They landed in Normandy at Utah Beach in late June 1944, then fought their way across France and into Belgium, providing the kind of artillery fire that made or broke ground battles. When infantry needed help, these men answered with steel. Yet back home, and even inside the army, they were second-class citizens. They ate in separate mess halls, slept in segregated barracks, and often got the worst jobs. Many came from the Jim Crow South, where they already knew what it meant to be told they were worth less than other citizens. And then the army asked them to risk their lives for a country that did not treat them as equals. Still, when the German army launched its last great offensive in the West, the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion was on the line in the Ardennes. Their guns would help decide whether the town of St. Vith, a key road hub, would hold or fall. And among the men of the 333rd were 11 artillerymen, whose names would be tied forever to a tiny hamlet called Wereth: Curtis Adams, Major Bradley, George Davis Jr., Thomas Fort, Robert Greene, James Leatherwood, Nathaniel Moss, George Motton, William Pritchett, James Stewart, Dew Turner. They did not know it yet, but their war was down to its final hours. December 16th, 1944. The Allies think the Ardennes is a quiet sector. Then, before dawn, the German army proves them wrong. Under cover of fog and snow, German units slam into the thinly held American lines. This is the start of the Battle of the Bulge. Their goal is to punch through, seize key road junctions like St. Vith and Bastogne, cross the Meuse River, and split the Allied front. The 333rd Field Artillery Battalion is positioned near the village of Schönberg, east of St. Vith. When the attack begins, they do exactly what artillery is supposed to do. They stay put and fire. While infantry units of the 106th Infantry Division are collapsing under the weight of the assault, the 333rd keeps its guns in action, buying time at enormous risk. As the German pressure mounts, most of the battalion is finally ordered to withdraw toward Bastogne. But not everyone can leave. Some batteries and service elements remain behind as a rear guard to cover the retreat. On December 17th, German forces reach Schönberg. Vehicles of the 333rd trying to escape are hit, men are killed, and many survivors are rounded up as prisoners of war. In the chaos, small groups scatter into the woods, trying to avoid both German patrols and friendly fire from American aircraft that are attacking anything that moves on the roads. 11 men from the 333rd, mostly from Service Battery and Sea Battery, break away together. They are exhausted. They have not had proper food, rest, or shelter in more than a day. It is freezing. The snow is deep. Their own lines are somewhere to the west, but nobody is sure exactly where. They decide to move on foot, cross-country, heading roughly west and north, away from the German advance, toward what they hope is safety. After hours of trudging through snow and fields, they see a tiny cluster of houses ahead, a 9-house hamlet called Wereth. By mid-afternoon, about 3 p.m., the 11 soldiers reach the first house in Wereth. It belongs to a farmer named Matthias Langer. Inside are his wife Maria and their children. The Langers are Belgian, but this corner of Belgium was part of Germany until after World War I. Some families in the area still feel closer to Germany than to Belgium, and everyone knows the SS is nearby. Welcoming Allied soldiers here is not a small gesture. It is a gamble with your life. The men knock anyway. When Matthias opens the door, he finds 11 black American soldiers, frozen and exhausted. They explain that they are from the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion, cut off from their unit, trying to make it back to American lines. The Langers bring them inside. They offer coffee, bread, a chance to sit by the stove. The children hand out blankets. The soldiers take off their boots and socks to dry them, warming their numb feet. For the first time in many hours, maybe days, they feel something like safety. But outside that farmhouse window, the village is watching. Wereth is small. Everyone can see who comes and goes, and 3 of the 9 families are known to be openly pro-German, still loyal to the Reich. According to later research, the wife of a German soldier who lived in the hamlet sees the men and alerts nearby SS troops that black American soldiers are hiding in the Langer house. The Langers know what that could mean. To shelter Allied troops is to risk arrest, or worse. The Americans know it too. So, when the German vehicle pulls up outside and Waffen-SS soldiers approach the door, the 11 men of the 333rd make a choice. They walk out with their hands up. They surrender without a fight, not because they are cowards, but because they refuse to drag the Langer family down with them. It is the last act of agency they will ever have. The SS men belong to a reconnaissance group operating under the 1st SS Panzer Division, the same elite Waffen-SS formation that will become infamous for the Malmedy massacre. Current research points to a scouting party from Schnellgruppe Knittel, commanded by Sturmbannführer Gustav Knittel, as the likely perpetrators. They line the 11 Americans up, search them, and march them away from the Langer farmhouse toward a nearby pasture. Villagers later recall the strange sight: 11 prisoners running ahead of a German vehicle as dusk falls over the snow-covered fields. Under the Geneva Conventions, these men are now prisoners of war. They are hors de combat, out of the fight, and should be protected. Germany is a signatory. The rules are clear, on paper. In reality, the Nazis have spent years preaching that black people are racially inferior, unworthy, and that America's use of black combat troops is itself a kind of crime. The SS, steeped in that ideology, sees these men not just as enemies, but as targets. Not long after the column disappears into the night, people in Wereth hear automatic gunfire from the direction of the pasture. Then silence. For weeks, the front lines wash back and forth. Nobody goes out to that field. Snow falls. The bodies lie where they fell. Only in February 1945, as the Allies drive the Germans back for good and the snow begins to melt, does the truth come out. Members of the Langer family guide an American patrol to the place where they believe the soldiers were taken. In a churned, muddy pasture, the patrol finds 11 bodies. Captain William Everett, an American medical examiner, inspects the dead. What he sees is not a quick execution. It is a crime of hatred. Later accounts, based on those examinations and subsequent research, describe shattered bones and crushed skulls from rifle butt blows, bayonet wounds, and multiple gunshot wounds. Several of the men have fingers missing, apparently cut off, likely to steel rings. Some have damage that suggests they were run over by vehicles. Many show clear signs of prolonged abuse before death, not just being shot once and left. Compared to the Malmedy massacre, itself a major war crime, the brutality here is more intimate, more personal. At Malmedy, SS troops machine-gunned a large group of prisoners and left quickly. The bodies showed little evidence of torture. At Wereth, the opposite is true. Far fewer victims, far more signs of deliberate cruelty. 7 of the 11 are eventually buried at the Henri Chapelle American Cemetery in Belgium. 4 are returned home to their families in the United States. The U.S. Army opens a war crimes investigation. For 2 years, investigators look for the SS unit and the individuals responsible. But the trail is cold, witnesses are scared, and the front has moved hundreds of miles east. In February 1947, the Army quietly closes the case without identifying a single perpetrator. The file is marked classified and essentially disappears into an archive. When the U.S. later compiles its main report on German atrocities during the Battle of the Bulge, the Wereth massacre is simply left out. For decades, the official story of the Bulge mentions Malmedy, a massacre of white POWs, but not Wereth, where 11 black GIs were tortured and killed. For nearly 50 years, the massacre at Wereth is remembered mainly by 2 groups: the families of the dead in America and the people of Wereth itself. Matthias and Maria Langer never forget the night 11 desperate young men arrived at their door, or the terrible sight they later found in that pasture. Their son, Herman, grows up with those memories. As an old man, he decides that a private memory is not enough. On September 11, 1994, exactly 50 years after the men were murdered, Herman Langer erects a simple stone cross with their names on it, in the corner of the field where they died. It is not an official monument, just a family's gesture of remembrance on their own land. American visitors eventually stumble on the cross. One of them is Dr. Norman Lichtenfeld, the son of a Battle of the Bulge veteran. Shocked that he has never heard this story before, he helps raise money, together with Belgian partners, for a proper memorial. On May 23, 2004, a permanent monument is dedicated at Wereth. It honors the 11 men by name and, more broadly, all African American soldiers and segregated units who fought in Europe in World War II. It is believed to be the only memorial of its kind in Europe. In the following years, U.S. Army units stationed in Europe begin holding annual ceremonies at the site. The American Battle Monuments Commission, the U.S. Embassy in Belgium, and veterans organizations share the story. Articles in major outlets and a 2011 docudrama titled The Wereth 11 bring the case to a wider audience. In 2017, more than 70 years after the crime, the U.S. Congress finally passes a concurrent resolution formally recognizing the Wereth 11, noting that their massacre was omitted from earlier official reports and remained largely unknown to most Americans. The long silence begins to crack. Today, Wereth is just a tiny hamlet again, a few houses and quiet fields. But on a rise above the village stands a stone monument with 11 names. For decades, their story was almost forgotten. Now, at least, it is told out loud.